Hey, good morning guys. I'm the Tech Prepper. Hope you're all doing well. We had a malfunction with the GoPros, so we're gonna do it on the iPhone 8. I'm out here in Cave Creek, Arizona, doing a joint activation with Red Summit RF Charlie and David. And we're approaching Whiskey 7 Alpha stroke Mike November 041 Elephant Mountain. And it's gonna be a short video today since I lost the GoPro. The Tech Prepper failed and did not bring a backup SD card, but we'll try to capture some footage. All right, guys, we'll see you up there. All right, guys, so that's the face we need to get to. That's the summit. And we have quite the drop, not so much on this side, the south side. And out in the distance, that's our parking lot where we came from. And we've got red out there. And like I said, that was one heck of a climb coming up on the northeast side. So wish us luck. And we're certainly going to have an adventure today. Man, it's a tough one.
Do it. This is the part we don't like.
Yeah, Charlie, this is the path of least resistance.
All right, cool.
Yeah, drop your hold, man.
All right. Oh, yeah.
We have arrived.
Oh, finally, man. There it is.
We made it.
We made it. I tell you.
11:11 too.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's over.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we finally made it. It took us 4 hours and 30 minutes, but we're finally at the summit. This was the peak that defeated me. Again, apologies for having the GoPro died. Not very prepared with the second SIM card. So we're gonna do a little operating, and then we're gonna head back down west and take a different route back. All right, guys, don't do what we're doing, but it was an adventure for sure. See you in a bit. CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo Tango 1 Romeo Uniform November for Summits on the Air, calling CQ, CQ, CQ.
So you're running 2-meter sideband.
Yeah, off the PackTenna truck mounts, and I have it in a horizontal configuration with the Comet BNC 24 antennas, and yeah, just a little bit of feed line coming down into the 817.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool stuff. CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo Tango 1.
Setting up, Jeff. Oh, there it is.
Kilo India 7 Quebec Echo Kilo. You are 5959. You are my first single sideband contact on a summit.
All right, USL. Yeah, it was happy to see a 2-meter sideband spot come out. So yeah, thanks for the contact here at 59 down in South Phoenix.
Roger, Roger. 7-3.
All right, 7-3. Good luck.
Great success.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we just finished our activation, and it's about 12:30 p.m. local time. We found ourselves in a bad spot and don't have a real good route to go back, so we're deciding to take an alternate route. We did split apart from our party. We did establish comms on 2-meter Simplex, and the plan is for us to take a different route home and meet up with him in about 4 or 5 hours. We gave him a location over radio to pick us up. So we'll definitely do an after-action report because a lot went wrong today, but there was also a lot of wins. We'll talk about those in a bit. Morning, guys. It's a couple days later, and I want to put together a quick after-action report of sorts based on the first 5 minutes you saw. We did have a malfunction with my GoPro very early on. The SD card got corrupted, and I decided not to film a video. I took a few shots with my camera, but luckily Charlie was able to send me a little bit of footage, so I was able to kind of cobble together a story. So let's talk about that adventure, and I particularly want to focus on, we'll talk about radio for sure, but a couple of things that actually saved the day in terms of us being out in the wilderness. So I had planned to take out a newly licensed technician class operator who expressed some interest in summits on the air. And I also hadn't done an activation with Charlie in some time, so I thought it might be fun for the three of us to get together. The peak that I picked was a peak that I wanted to do. It was a peak that had defeated me last year. I approached it from the west side and I was beat up with the slow progress. The terrain was rocky, lots of shrubs, lots of bushwhacking, and I wasn't able to complete that summit. So this was on my list for this year, and that was the only weekend that I could tackle it. So my first mistake was inviting some newcomers to a peak that I knew was challenging without knowing their fitness level. So more on that in a second. But long story short, we decided to tackle Elephant Mountain in Cave Creek, Arizona. And only two other activators had activated in the past. And this time I decided to attempt the climb from a more aggressive elevation perspective. We covered about 1,600 feet of elevation. But since we were bringing somebody else, I decided to take the lead and put together an itinerary, make sure everybody had what they needed in terms of maps and the right gear, and we did all of that perfectly, wonderfully executed. We arrived at the trailhead at 6:30 per the schedule. We started out with very low light, the temperatures were cool, everybody felt good, but then very early on in our trip, probably a couple miles into the hike, one of the members in our group started to develop some hot spots and wasn't sure if he could make the climb. And we hadn't reached the part where the climb started to really have a more significant grade, and also the point at which we hadn't reached the point where we were starting to go off trail yet. And kudos to David for raising his hand saying, hey guys, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it any further. If I do, I may become a liability. So this was about 2 miles into the hike, and we made a group decision. We would have all left together if needed, but David said, hey, this is a well-marked trail. We've passed about 5 or 6 people on the way out here. Let me go back, and we have our radios, and we'll keep in contact. So I had a hard time with that, but in the end, it was just Charlie and I who decided to proceed on. So what we decided to do, since we had dual band radios, we decided to come up with a small comms plan, and nothing sophisticated. We essentially agreed to use the 2-meter Simplex frequency, 146.520, and we chose that because the other operator was new and his radio was not fully programmed. We were correcting that, and we figured if he needed something and we were not in Simplex range, he would have a better likelihood of getting into other stations that could provide support. But in hindsight, we probably should have also programmed a repeater just in case, so he would have had some alternate options to support. But the plan was to keep it simple, and we decided to check in at the top of the hour to conserve our battery power. And that worked really well. As we started to proceed up the trail, at the top of the hour, we were able to relate to him where we were, and likewise, he was able to do the same thing. Now, when we got onto the saddle, this was the point at which we discovered a primitive trail. And I will tell you, the primitive trail was very dangerous, and we had lots of exposure. And our packs were fairly bulky in size, and Charlie and I made it through, even with the gain. We had a total of, I think, 1,600 feet of gain. But there was way too much exposure. If either of us fell, it would have either been a airlift evacuation or maybe a fatality. So very scary. And once we got off the side with a lot of exposure, we found ourselves several hundred feet below the summit and had to do a fairly significant rock scramble. There's a little bit of footage that I caught of that, or Charlie did. We both did. And we didn't think we could come back down that way. So long story short, we get to the summit, and we are about 2.5 hours behind our normal schedule, and we only had about 5 hours of usable light left. So we did a very quick activation. I actually tried for the first time doing 2-meter and 440 single sideband, and it was great. I used the PackTenna Trek mount, made probably about 10 or 11 contacts with the locals, and decided not to do HF. I had planned to do 20 meters, but there just wasn't enough time. I knew we had about 5 hours to get off summit. So Charlie did his CW thing. He completely rocked it. He had an entire sheet of contacts, and him and I discussed the approach back down, and what we decided was that we could not do the same descent with our packs. And I offered an alternative. I said, hey, I've done this sort of from the other end. The trail is real bad, real rocky, but there isn't as much exposure. It'll be safe. It's just going to be brutal bushwhacking through that stuff and jumping barbed wire fences. So he said, yeah, let's do that. So what we did is we actually pulled out my topographical maps. I had printed one before for the area we were in, but I also carry one for the Tonto National Forest. And between the two, I was roughly able to find a course for us. I estimated between 5 and 7 kilometers to get back. Turns out we were spot on. And then we radioed to David and basically said, hey, here's the plan. We think we're going to be able to make the other side of the trailhead of sorts in about 4 hours. Can you pick us up? Here's the location. And I will tell you, it absolutely was successful. Charlie and I made our trek through. It was as rough as I thought it was going to be. We took a look at our topo maps and kind of adjusted here and there. I showed him a little bit of how the UTM system worked. And we basically did it all offline with paper maps. And we were actually able to hook up with David on the other side in New River within about 6 minutes of our agreed time. And we had probably about 30 minutes of daylight left as buffer. So long story short here, guys, it was an interesting day. We all had the right gear. Some of us didn't have the same fitness level and had some minor injuries they had to work through. But at the end of the day, establishing a communications plan, staying in radio contact, the three of us all being licensed, cool-headed, making the right decisions, not to rush, was absolutely what I think people need to be aware of when they're out in the backcountry. So really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Just a real quick wrap up before I go to work this morning. I'm the Tech Prepper. Be strong, be safe, and be prepared.